I used to think silence was peace. Now I know it's what guilt sounds like when it runs out of words. The house has been quiet for 3 months. I still wake up at 3:17 every night, same minute, same second. That was the time the detectives first knocked on my door. The sound that split my life cleanly in two. Before that knock, I had a family. After it, I had the truth. I can't tell which one hurt more. I'm sitting in the living room, staring at the framed photo that's been face down on the mantle since the trial. My father's smile in that picture still feels like a threat. Wide, confident, practiced. My mother's hands are on his chest, delicate and small. The same hands that later stirred the coffee that nearly killed me. I should have thrown it away, but I can't. Throwing it away feels like pretending it never happened, and I've had enough pretending for a lifetime. People keep telling me I should write about it, that it might help. I don't know if they realize what they're asking. Writing means remembering, and remembering means bleeding all over again. But I guess this is how healing works. You walk back through the fire, one burned memory at a time. So here it is, the beginning of the story that ruined me. It didn't start with the lie everyone knows about. Not the fake cancer, not the news cameras or the handcuffs. It started months before that, when I was still naive enough to believe that truth and loyalty could coexist in the same sentence. My father taught me otherwise. He used to say, "Family is a shield, son. You don't stab the hand that feeds you, even when it's dirty." At first I thought he meant strength. Later I realized he meant silence. And silence, in our family, was currency. I remember the first time I saw him cheat. I was 23, still new at the firm, proud of myself for earning the job without his name on my resume. We were reviewing a claim for a client who died in an accident, or at least that's what the file said. My father winked as he signed the paperwork, then whispered, "There's no body, but there's profit." I laughed. He didn't. That moment should have told me everything I needed to know about the man I was trying so hard to impress. But I ignored it, because in our family, love was earned by complicity, and I wanted his love more than I wanted the truth. Now I sit here, years later, drowning in both. The truth too heavy to carry, the love too poisonous to miss. Somewhere between those two weights, I lost myself. And if you're reading this, you should know, this isn't a story about redemption. It's a confession, the kind that comes too late. I remember the smell of the office more than anything. The mix of printer toner, burnt coffee, and the cologne my father wore like armor. It was the scent of ambition, of numbers stretched and truths bent until they snapped. I joined the firm the summer after university. He shook my hand on my first day, not as a father, but as a man evaluating an investment. "You'll earn your place here," he said, smiling that tight, camera-ready smile. "No shortcuts, even if you share my name." I thought it was pride. Later I realized it was control dressed up as mentorship. Those early months were a blur of policy files, endless calls, and the constant pressure to hit targets. My father's reputation hung over every desk. People lowered their voices when he passed, the way soldiers quiet down when a general walks in. He rewarded loyalty and destroyed dissent. That was his gospel. One evening, I stayed late to finish some reports. The cleaners had gone home, the building humming with that hollow silence that only fluorescent lights can make. I was reviewing accident claims when I noticed something odd. 2 policies, same beneficiary, same handwriting, different names. A clerical error, maybe? But the next page showed the same pattern, and the next. Whole strings of policies leading to ghost clients. When I asked my supervisor about it the next morning, she went pale. "If it's in your father's division, don't ask questions, just fix the numbers." She didn't look up again. That night I told myself it wasn't my problem, but it sat in my chest like a trapped insect, buzzing louder each day. I started keeping notes, dates, signatures, copies. I didn't know why yet. Maybe I just wanted proof that I wasn't imagining the rot. My mother would call in the evenings, asking if I'd eaten, if I was sleeping. I told her everything was fine. She believed me. She always did. In our family, belief was an act of survival. The first time I confronted my father about the files, he laughed. "You think I built this from honesty? Grow up, son." He poured himself a drink and clinked the glass against mine. "We help people cheat a system that's already cheating them. That's balance." I stared at the amber in his glass and wondered when morality had started sounding like math. That was the night something small cracked inside me. I didn't know it yet, but the crack would widen until everything I was slipped through it. After that night, everything between us shifted, though neither of us said it out loud. We still shared a roof, a surname, and the hollow ritual of breakfast silence, but the air in the house felt charged, like static before a storm. My father pretended nothing had changed. He left early, came home late, and filled the in-between with the noise of business calls. My mother floated between us like fragile furniture, smoothing tablecloths, refilling cups we didn't want. I'd watch her eyes dart from his face to mine, measuring which one of us would erupt first. Work became unbearable. Every document I touched felt infected. I began spotting patterns everywhere. Payouts just under audit limits, signatures that looked too identical, accidents that read like copy-paste tragedies. Each discovery dug me deeper into a guilt that wasn't fully mine, yet somehow lived in my skin. I stopped sleeping. The ceiling above my bed turned into a projection screen for every number I'd ever typed into a form. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, convinced that people were dying somewhere because of what we'd done, or because of what I refused to expose. Tristan noticed first. We'd been friends since college. He had that calm kind of loyalty that never needed explanation. One night he dragged me out for drinks. "You look like a ghost," he said. "What's going on?" I almost told him everything, but the words jammed behind my teeth. How could I explain that the man I called father made his living off forged pain, that I'd built my own career on top of the same rot? Instead, I said I was just overworked. He didn't believe me, but he let it go. The next week, I found my journals torn open on my desk, pages creased, my handwriting underlined in red pen. My father had read them. When I confronted him, he smiled without looking up from his laptop. Curiosity's a dangerous habit, especially when you're living off my name. Something in me snapped. I slammed the notebook shut and hissed, "Your name is a curse." He didn't flinch, then stopped carrying it. It was such a simple sentence, but it landed like a death threat, because in our family, to reject his name was to stop existing. That night, I walked for hours through empty streets, the city humming around me, trying to decide what scared me more, the truth I'd found or the silence it demanded. By dawn, one thought had hardened in my mind. If I couldn't expose him, I had to escape him. I didn't know yet that escaping my father would mean lying to everyone else. The weeks that followed felt like living inside a fog. I went to work, answered calls, filed reports, but it was as if someone else was moving my hands. The real me hovered somewhere behind my eyes, watching everything from a distance. My father didn't speak to me unless it was about business. My mother sensed it. Mothers always do. And that tension, she treated the tension like a ghost we could exorcise by pretending it wasn't there. She filled the house with the smell of cooking, played old records at dinner, tried to make conversation about weather and neighborhood gossip. None of it worked. I stopped eating with them. The food tasted like guilt. Tristan kept calling, but I ignored most of his messages. I didn't want to see his face and risk blurting out the truth. Every lie of omission felt safer than confrontation, but the silence was suffocating. One evening, I found myself parked outside a pharmacy, engine running, staring at the sign's blue glow. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe an hour, maybe two. Inside my chest, something ugly was growing. Exhaustion, shame, and this deep, clawing need to be seen. Not for the son I was supposed to be, but for the broken thing I'd become. When I finally went inside, I didn't even know what I was looking for. I walked down the aisles, reading labels like confessions, antidepressants, sleeping aids, cough syrups. My reflection in the cold glass doors looked like someone already halfway gone. I didn't buy anything. I just went home, shut the door, and cried for the first time in years, the kind of crying that makes no sound. That night, my mother knocked on my door with a bowl of soup. "You're pale," she said softly. "You should take a few days off work." I told her I couldn't. She placed her hand on my forehead like when I was a child. "You'll make yourself sick." Her voice trembled on the word sick. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the exhaustion or the need for an excuse to collapse without admitting why. Maybe it was the hope that pain could make people care again. Whatever it was, I looked at her and whispered the words that would ruin everything. "Mom, the doctor says it might be cancer." The room froze. Her face went white, then crumbled. The bowl slipped from her hands, spilling soup across the floor. She fell to her knees beside it, sobbing into her palms. And in that moment, seeing her cry for me, because of me, something twisted inside me. It felt like love, but it wasn't. It was relief. Understood. From this point onward, each chapter will stay lean, around 3 or 4 strong paragraphs, and I'll deliver several at once so the story flows naturally. Here's the next stretch. The next morning, the house felt different. My mother had been up all night. Her eyes were swollen, her voice too calm. She moved around the kitchen like she was handling fragile glass. When my father came down, she told him before I could take the words back. He stared at me for a long time. "What kind?" he asked finally. "Stomach," I said, the first thing that came to mind. He nodded once, turned away, and poured coffee. "We'll handle it." By noon, my phone was full of messages, relatives, colleagues, even Tristan. Word spread faster than I expected. Sympathy came pouring in, and it felt good. Not the shallow kind of attention, but something heavier. People saw me, cared for me. For the first time in years, the house wasn't a battlefield. My mother fluttered around me with vitamins and herbal teas. My father canceled meetings. For a while, we felt almost normal again. The lie grew legs of its own. My father insisted on paying for treatment abroad. He called in favors, arranged consultations I had to invent reasons to postpone. My mother filled notebooks with diet plans and prayer schedules. I memorized the stages of chemotherapy from Google, so my stories would line up. At work, colleagues looked at me differently, gentler, respectful. Pity can be powerful. But at night, the guilt roared. I'd lie awake, hearing my father's voice in my head. Family is a shield. He was still using me, even if he didn't know it. My sickness had become his redemption story, proof that he still had a heart. Reporters ran a short article about his philanthropy work. I watched him read it at the breakfast table, pride shining in his eyes. It made me sick for real. Tristan came by one evening with flowers, and that worried smile of his. "You should have told me sooner," he said. "I didn't want to make a big deal out of it," I lied. He laughed softly, shook his head, and hugged me. The warmth of it hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to tell him the truth, to confess everything, but the moment passed. The lie had built a wall between us. Beautiful, solid, and impossible to climb. When he left, I sat in the dark and replayed his words. "You're strong, man. You'll beat this." And I realized how much I needed him to believe that, because if he stopped believing, the whole world I'd built would crumble overnight. Days bled into weeks. My father started using my condition in sales pitches, donations, charity drives, moral appeal. He'd stand beside me at events, his hand on my shoulder, telling clients that life had reminded him what truly mattered. People loved the story. Business boomed. At home, my mother's care turned obsessive. She monitored my meals, slipped supplements into my drinks, called every 2 hours from work. The attention that once felt comforting began to choke me. One evening, I found her crying quietly over a bowl of soup, whispering, "Why you, my son?" I wanted to tell her it wasn't me. It was all of us, rotting together under the weight of one man's greed and another man's cowardice. But I couldn't. The words would have killed her faster than the poison she thought was inside me. By the third month, the house had turned into a shrine to my supposed recovery. Bottles of imported supplements lined the counter. A whiteboard in the kitchen tracked imaginary progress updates. Week 8, stable. Week 9, improved appetite. My father hired a nurse part-time to monitor me, an older woman named Mrs. Obong. She was kind, quiet, and never asked too many questions. I wondered if she knew the truth, if she could see it written in the way I flinched whenever someone said, "You'll be okay." But the strange part was, sometimes I started believing it myself. The power of collective delusion is terrifying. Everyone around me believed so hard that it began to feel real. I felt tired. My stomach hurt. Maybe guilt can make you sick in the body too. At night, I'd catch my mother praying outside my door, whispering deals into the darkness. "Take me instead, Lord. Spare him." Each word was a blade twisting in me. I wanted to tell her everything, but then I'd see how my father looked at me, softer, almost human, and I'd think, if this lie is the only thing keeping us together, maybe it's worth it. One Sunday afternoon, my father organized a charity banquet in my honor. It was supposed to raise funds for cancer awareness, but really it was a PR stunt, a chance to polish his image and close deals under the glow of sympathy. I watched him on stage, voice breaking at the right moments, describing my bravery. The guests clapped. Some cried. I felt like I was watching my own funeral from the back row. When I slipped out to the balcony for air, Tristan found me there. He leaned against the railing, eyes red. "You know, if you need a donor match or anything, just say the word. I'll do it." My throat closed. I wanted to tell him to stop, to leave before I drowned in my own shame, but I just nodded because the lie had me by the throat now. As he walked away, I realized something even worse. I'd started to crave his pity. The next morning, my father found me in his study, staring at an email. His jaw was tight, his hands trembling slightly. He said, "We've been invited to a national summit, health sector collaboration. They want us there. Your story's gone viral." He smiled, as if this were good news. I stood there, silent. Viral. The word made my stomach twist. This wasn't just a local rumor anymore. It was turning into a movement. My name was in articles, tagged in posts. People were calling me an inspiration. Every share was another nail in the coffin of my truth. That night, I lay awake scrolling through hundreds of comments, strangers praying for me, children saying I gave them hope. And for a brief, horrifying moment, I didn't hate it. I felt loved. That's when I understood the real danger, not getting caught, but forgetting it was a lie. Then something shifted. My mother started keeping her phone face down, whispering when she thought I couldn't hear. Once, I caught her crying in the car, clutching a medical brochure. When I asked what was wrong, she forced a smile and said, "Just tired." But her eyes told another story. Fear, the kind that comes from knowing something terrible. That week, she began insisting I see a specialist she had found on her own. Private practice, very discreet. He doesn't take public patients. Just let me arrange it. I panicked. If I refused, she'd suspect something. If I agreed, the lie would fall apart in a matter of minutes. So I told her I wasn't ready yet, that I needed to prepare myself mentally.
She just nodded and whispered, "Okay, when you're ready." But her tone said she didn't believe me anymore. I began noticing the small things first, her searching looks, the way she lingered in the doorway when I took my pills, how she would hover by my phone when it buzzed. One evening I came home early from work and caught her rifling through my drawers. She froze when she saw me, a bottle of vitamins in her hand. "I was just checking the dosage," she said, her voice trembling, but the look in her eyes said it all. She didn't trust me anymore. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. The lie that once glued us together was now the wedge driving us apart, and I couldn't even blame her. I'd built a story so perfect that it couldn't withstand a single question. By morning, she'd gone quiet, overly calm, like someone who'd already decided what to do. That scared me more than her suspicion. A week later, she made an announcement at breakfast. "I've scheduled an appointment with Dr. Mensah. He's one of the top oncologists in the region. I already sent your medical file." I froze, mid-sip. "What file?" She smiled faintly, as if reading my mind. "Your father keeps copies of everything. You'll thank me later." The spoon in my hand felt like a lead weight. There were no medical records, no scans, no test results, just a void filled with forged prescriptions and emotional manipulation. If she went through with it, everything would unravel. That day, I called Tristan and told him I might need a favor.
"What kind of favor?" he asked. "The kind that saves my life twice," I said. He didn't understand. Not yet. Tristan met me at a cafe near the office that night. He looked tired, the kind of tired that came from carrying someone else's chaos for too long. "You're scaring me, man," he said, stirring his coffee. "Just tell me what's going on." I tried. I really did. But the words got stuck somewhere between my chest and my throat. I mumbled something about family pressure and private health matters. He leaned back, studying me. "You're lying again, aren't you?" The accusation hit harder than I expected. I didn't answer. "Whatever this is," he said, "it's going to eat you alive if you don't stop." When I got home that night, my father was in the living room, reading the day's paper. Without looking up, he said, "Your mother is worried about you. Don't make her regret caring." It wasn't a warning. It was a threat wrapped in concern. The morning of the appointment, my body felt foreign, heavy, unwilling. My mother was already dressed, purse in hand, eyes bright with forced optimism. I told her I wasn't feeling well enough to go. She said, "That's exactly why we need to." In that moment, I realized she wasn't doing this to expose me. She was doing it because she believed, desperately, completely, and she needed proof that hope wasn't misplaced. So I faked a coughing fit, stumbling toward the sink. The act came too easily. My stomach turned at how practiced I'd become. She panicked, called off the visit, and spent the rest of the day hovering, feeding me soup, whispering prayers. That night, when she finally fell asleep beside the couch, I sat in the dark, watching her breathe. I wanted to confess. I wanted to end it all. But then I thought of my father, of how he'd twist the truth to save himself, how he'd use my breakdown as proof of my weakness. And once again, fear won over honesty. Tristan called me 2 days later. His voice was calm, too calm. He talked to an old classmate of mine. She works at St. Andrews, the hospital you said you got tested at. My heart stopped. She couldn't find your records. Nothing. Not your name, not your test results. You want to tell me what's really going on? I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. Maybe they filed it under another name. My dad handled everything. There was a long silence on the other end, the kind that makes your skin crawl. Then Tristan said quietly, You're in something deeper than you think, man. Whatever this is, get out before it swallows you." He hung up. For the first time since this all began, I felt truly alone. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from being unloved, but the kind that comes when every lie starts echoing back at you louder than your own heartbeat. The next morning, my mother handed me a cup of coffee. "I added honey," she said, "for your throat." I nodded, sipping slowly, my hands shaking just enough to make it believable. But halfway through, I tasted something off, metallic, faintly bitter. She smiled at me too kindly, too long. "You'll feel better soon," she whispered. My pulse quickened. My tongue went dry. I set the cup down. "Mom," I said, "what's in this?" Her smile didn't falter. "Just something to help you rest." The room tilted slightly, and I knew. She wasn't lying. She genuinely believed what she was doing was love. My mind raced. Was it a sleeping pill? A sedative? Something stronger? I excused myself, stumbled into the bathroom, and poured the rest of the coffee down the sink. That night, I lay awake listening to her soft humming in the next room. It wasn't malicious. It was devotion, twisted beyond reason. And that made it so much worse. I started recording things. Our conversations, the noises at night, even the sound of her stirring tea. I needed proof. Or maybe I just needed to feel like I wasn't losing my mind. At work, I kept my head down, but my father's empire was thriving. His new charity campaign, Hearts for Hope, had raised over $50,000 for cancer awareness. He even used my face on the brochures. When I saw the printouts, my stomach turned. I confronted him that evening. "You're using my illness to make money." He didn't flinch. "I'm using your story to make good out of pain. That's what family does. We survive together." "You mean we lie together?" He smiled, that cold, perfect smile that had fooled everyone for years. "Call it what you want, just don't ruin it." I realized then, he didn't believe I was sick either. He just didn't care. As long as the lie served him, it might as well be true. A few nights later, Tristan showed up unannounced. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I've been digging," he said. "You need to tell me the truth before someone else does." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But my throat locked up again. Instead, I played him one of the recordings. My mother's voice whispering, "He doesn't need to suffer. Just one more dose and he'll rest." He froze. "What the hell is this?" I said, "She thinks she's helping me. She doesn't know the truth." He stared at me for a long time, realization dawning in his eyes. "You made it up, didn't you?" When I didn't answer, he stepped back like I'd hit him. "You lied about having cancer. You lied to everyone." His voice cracked, and I saw it. The disappointment, the betrayal, the grief. Before he left, he said something that would haunt me for weeks. "She's killing you because you taught her how." For days after Tristan left, I lived in a fog. The silence in the house grew heavy, suffocating, and full of ghosts that weren't there. My mother moved softly around me, humming hymns, bringing tea I never drank. My father spent more time at his office, his phone glued to his ear, his tone clipped and urgent. One night, I heard them arguing in the kitchen. "He's getting worse," my mother whispered. "He needs rest." "He needs control," he replied. "Don't make this harder than it already is." Something crashed. Maybe a cup. Maybe her patience. I crept halfway down the stairs and saw her standing rigid, her hands trembling. He leaned in close, voice low. "You want to help him? Then stay quiet. I know what I'm doing." It wasn't love that kept this family together. It was fear. And I just realized I wasn't the only one trapped inside it. I started documenting everything. Not just audio, but timestamps, photos, conversations. It was the only thing that gave me a sense of control. I uploaded the files to a cloud drive under an alias. If something happened to me, at least the truth wouldn't die with me. Tristan stopped replying to my texts. I couldn't blame him. Still, I checked my phone every hour hoping he'd forgive me. The guilt was physical now, a constant ache in my chest. One afternoon, my father called me into his study. He gestured for me to sit, poured himself a drink, and said, "Your friend's been asking questions." "Tristan?" He nodded. "Snooping around at your office, asking about accounts, clients, dates. I don't like nosy people, son." I swallowed hard. He's just worried. Worried people make mistakes. Tell him to stop before he finds something he shouldn't. It wasn't advice. It was a command. That evening, I met Tristan at a quiet bar near the old harbor, the kind of place where the music was low and no one cared who you were. "You know your dad's company is laundering money through fake medical claims, right?" he said before I could even sit down. "What?" He pulled out a folder from his bag, thick with printouts. "These aren't random mistakes. These are ghost policies tied to dead people, names that show up in the same fake cancer fund he's running in your name." The room seemed to tilt. "I don't understand," I whispered. "If I go to the police, they'll find out everything. The fake illness, the donations, all of it." Tristan leaned forward. "So you'd rather protect him than save yourself?" I didn't answer, because the truth was uglier than that. I didn't know how to separate saving myself from destroying him. I came home late that night, my shirt smelling of beer and guilt. My mother was waiting by the door, her eyes red from crying. "Where were you?" she asked softly. "Out." "You shouldn't stay out this late. It weakens you." She reached for my arm, but I pulled back. The hurt that flashed across her face was quick, but sharp. "Mom," I said carefully, "what have you been putting in my drinks lately?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Finally, she said, "Just a mild sedative, to help you rest. You don't sleep anymore." "You can't drug me!" "I'm not drugging you," she snapped. "I'm helping you survive." The way she said it, so sincere, so certain, chilled me to the bone. I realized she wasn't delusional. She was desperate.
She was desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. The next morning, my father confronted me before work. "You've been meeting Tristan again," he said flatly. I didn't deny it. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You think you're doing the right thing, but that boy doesn't understand how the world works. He'll drag you down with him." I met his gaze. Maybe that's what I deserve. He chuckled softly, almost pityingly. "You sound just like your mother, too emotional for your own good." Then he leaned in close enough for me to smell the whiskey on his breath. "If you want to play the hero, make sure you're ready to burn." When he left, I sat there, shaking, not out of fear, but because for the first time I realized he was right about one thing. The fire was already spreading, and I was the spark that lit it. The storm broke the following week. I came home to find my father pacing the living room, phone pressed to his ear, barking orders. The moment he saw me, he hung up. "What did you tell him?" "Who?" "Your friend, Tristan." I felt the blood drain from my face. "He's been talking to people, journalists. One of them called me this morning asking for a statement." His eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what kind of fire you've started." My mother emerged from the kitchen, clutching her rosary. "Maybe it's God's way of making us face the truth," she said quietly. My father turned on her, eyes blazing. "Don't start." And for the first time, she didn't back down. "You built this house on lies, Martin. You brought this on us." He raised his hand as if to strike her, but stopped halfway. The silence that followed was heavier than violence. He stormed out,
slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. My mother stood trembling, then whispered, "He'll destroy everything before he lets it fall apart." I believed her. That night, I met Tristan in his car, parked 2 streets away from my house. He looked exhausted but determined. I sent everything to the Financial Crimes Unit. They're looking into it, but they'll need more evidence, things only you can access. My stomach nodded. "Tristan, if this blows up, my family's done. My parents. They did this, not you." "I lied too." He sighed. "Then make it mean something." He handed me a flash drive. "Get whatever you can. Emails, records, anything that proves the fraud. I'll handle the rest." As he drove off, I stood in the rain, feeling both liberated and condemned. For the first time, I wasn't protecting anyone, not even myself. My father's study had always been forbidden territory, but that night while he was out, I slipped inside. The air smelled of cologne and old paper. His desk was immaculate, too immaculate. Hidden beneath a false panel, I found a stack of hard drives, some labeled, some not. I plugged one into my laptop. Emails, scans, spreadsheets. Every file was a confession dressed as business. I copied everything onto the flash drive. My hands shook so badly I could barely type. When I finished, I tucked it into my pocket and stood there for a long time, staring at the room that had defined my childhood. Every lie, every threat, every promise had been crafted in this space. It wasn't a study, it was a factory of deception. As I left, I caught sight of a framed photo on his shelf. Me at 10 years old, holding a fishing rod, my father's hand on my shoulder. He looked proud. I wondered if he remembered that day at all, or if the memory was as counterfeit as everything else in our lives. The next morning, my mother didn't wake me up with her usual soft knock. The house was too quiet. When I went downstairs, I found her sitting at the table, eyes glassy, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold. "Mom?" She looked up slowly. "He knows," she whispered. My blood ran cold. "Who?" "Your father. He knows what you took." I froze. My phone buzzed, a message from Tristan. "Someone's tipped him off. Don't go home." It was too late. A car engine roared outside. My mother flinched. "He's back," she said, voice trembling. "He said if you betray this family, he'll make sure you regret being born." The sound of tires on gravel grew louder. I grabbed the flash drive, stuffed it into my jacket, and ran out the back door. I didn't stop running until I reached the old pedestrian bridge by the river, the same place Tristan and I used to sneak beers after work. The wind stung my face, my lungs burned, and for a moment I thought I'd collapse. My phone buzzed again, another message from Tristan. "Meet me at the motel near 8th, room 12. Don't talk to anyone." I looked back toward home. The streetlights flickered like warnings. Somewhere behind those windows, my parents were tearing each other apart, the empire crumbling around them. I wanted to go back, to end it, to tell them everything, to stop this madness before it devoured us completely. But I knew better now. My father didn't deal in forgiveness, he dealt in control. So I turned away and walked into the night, toward the only person who still believed there was something left in me worth saving. The motel Tristan picked was the kind of place people went to disappear. Flickering neon sign, cracked windows, carpets that smelled of bleach and regret. He opened the door before I could knock. His eyes darted past me toward the parking lot. "You weren't followed?" "I don't think so," I said, catching my breath. "He knows, Tristan. My dad knows I took something." Tristan locked the door behind me, then took the flash drive. "Good. That means we're close." He plugged it into his laptop, scrolling through the folders. "Jesus, look at this! Forged death certificates, fake hospital records, offshore accounts. He's been doing this for years." I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind spinning. "You don't understand. He's dangerous. If he finds out you're helping me..." He already knows, he interrupted. He called me this morning, said he wanted to talk man to man. I stared at him. And you didn't go? Of course I didn't, but he sounded calm. That's what scared me. Because when my father was calm, people got hurt. By the third day in hiding, sleep had become a luxury. I kept checking the window, expecting his car to pull in at any moment. Tristan tried to keep me focused, compiling the files, labeling evidence, making copies. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. He'll come after her, I said suddenly. My mom! He'll blame her for this. He hesitated. Maybe she should come here. She won't leave him, I said bitterly. She never has. He looked at me for a long time. You still think she's innocent? I didn't answer, because I didn't know anymore. Love and guilt had tangled so tightly I couldn't tell which one was which. That night, I dreamed of her humming while she stirred my coffee, her eyes soft and full of faith. When I woke, I couldn't remember if the dream ended with her smile or with the taste of something bitter on my tongue. On the fourth morning, Tristan's contact from the Financial Crimes Unit called. They wanted a meeting, discreet, off-record, at an abandoned warehouse by the port. It sounded like something out of a bad thriller, but we didn't have a choice. We got there before dawn. The air smelled of rust and rain. 2 investigators met us inside, both in plain clothes. One of them, a woman named Okoro, took the flash drive and started scanning through the contents on a secure laptop. This is enough to open a formal case, she said finally. But if your father senses what's coming, he'll vanish before we can act. We'll need him to think everything is normal for a few more days. Normal? I repeated, almost laughing. Nothing's normal. She met my eyes. Then fake it a little longer. You're good at that. The word stung more than she knew. We agreed to return home, pretend, play along. That night, I stood outside the gate for a long time before walking in. The lights were still on. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her face pale, eyes swollen. "Where have you been?" she asked, voice trembling. "He's been looking for you everywhere." "I just needed space," I said. She nodded, though I could tell she didn't believe me. At dinner, my father acted like nothing had happened. He asked about work, about my treatment, even poured me a drink. But every smile felt like a blade. When he finally excused himself to make a call, my mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Whatever you're doing, please stop. You don't understand what he's capable of." Her voice cracked on the last word, capable. And for the first time, I believed her. The next morning, I found an envelope under my bedroom door. No note, just a USB stick. When I plugged it in, I froze. Videos, dozens of them, hidden camera footage, people signing fake insurance forms, doctors falsifying test results, staged accidents. At the end of one clip, my father appeared on screen, sitting across from a man I recognized from the hospital's accounting department. My father leaned in and said, almost casually, "People die every day. The smart ones just learn how to profit from it." My hands
trembled as I hit pause. The timestamp was from 2 months ago, right after I'd told him I was sick. It wasn't just fraud anymore. It was a confession, and someone, maybe my mother, maybe an accomplice, had just handed me the key to his downfall. I didn't sleep that night. I watched the videos over and over until the sound of my father's voice began to warp, less like speech, more like a hum under my skin. Tristan came by at dawn. I showed him the footage. He stared at the screen, mouth tight. "This isn't just fraud anymore," he said. "It's organized, and it's bigger than just him." "What do you mean?" I asked. He paused, then said, "Look at the background. That's not your house. That's the hospital's oncology wing. There are cameras there, but not ones we have access to. Someone high up is feeding you this." I felt a chill crawl up my arms. "Why?" "Maybe they want you to finish what they can't," Tristan said. Or maybe they want you to take the fall. He handed me back the USB. Either way, you're the bait now. That evening, I went to see my mother again. I found her sitting on the porch, clutching one of her rosary beads so tight her fingers were pale. "Mom," I said quietly, sitting beside her, "did you give me this?" I placed the USB drive in her lap. Her face drained of color. For a second, she didn't speak. Then, in a whisper that sounded almost rehearsed, she said, "You shouldn't have come back." "Why?" I demanded. "Tell me what's going on. You're scared of him too. I see it in your eyes." Her lips quivered. "You don't understand. He saved us once. We owed him everything." "What does that even mean?" She looked away, tears slipping down her cheek. "When you were little, you got sick. We couldn't afford treatment. He did something. He called in favors, falsified records, I don't know. He made sure you lived." My stomach dropped. "You mean he started all this? For me?" Her silence was answer enough. For days, those words wouldn't leave me. He did it for me. The corruption, the forged records, the lies, it all began with my survival. But knowing that didn't feel like comfort. It felt like a curse passed down in secret. At work, people started looking at me differently. My boss avoided eye contact. The hospital's HR sent me a vague email about pending administrative review. Someone was leaking information, and I was at the center of it. That night, Tristan texted, "They know you're the whistleblower. Delete everything and get out now." But I didn't. I stayed. I had to see it through, because if this had all started with my life, maybe it could end with my confession. The day the news broke, it felt like the city held its breath. Prominent hospital executive under investigation for insurance and medical fraud. My father's name was everywhere, on TV, in the papers, online. At first, I expected him to lash out, to call, to threaten, to deny. He didn't. He vanished. The police raided the hospital offices, seized files, froze accounts, but they couldn't find him. It was as if he had evaporated. My mother stopped eating. She sat in the living room with the curtains closed, whispering prayers under her breath. Once I heard her murmur, "He'll come back when it's safe. He always comes back." But something in her tone didn't sound like hope. It sounded like fear. The next week, I came home to find the front door slightly ajar. The house was dark, quiet. Then I saw her, my mother, sitting on the floor, her face pale, hands trembling. "He was here," she whispered. "He came in through the back." I froze. "Where is he now?" She didn't answer. She just pointed to the dining table. On it sat a single envelope with my name written in his handwriting. Inside was a note. "You took what was mine, but you're still my son. Don't forget who gave you your life and who can take it back." Underneath the note was a photo. It was me, sleeping in my bed. The timestamp was from last night. That night, sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every creak in the floorboards was him coming back. I called Tristan, voice trembling, and told him everything. The letter, the photo, the feeling that my father was close. He arrived within 20 minutes, headlights cutting through the rain. "We can't stay here," he said, grabbing my bag and pulling me toward the door. "My mother, she's not safe either," he interrupted. "If he's watching you, he's watching her." We checked her room before leaving. Her rosary beads were gone. Her closet was empty. On her pillow, she had left a note. "Don't look for me. He's not done yet." For a long moment, I just stood there, the rain pounding against the roof, my pulse drumming in my ears. It felt like the walls were collapsing inward, like the house itself wanted me gone. Tristan put a hand on my shoulder. "We're leaving, now." We drove through the night. No music, no talking, just the hum of the tires and the smell of wet asphalt. Around 3 a.m., we stopped at a rest station outside town. Tristan got out to buy coffee while I scrolled through the news on my phone. Every headline was about my father's fraud empire, but buried deep in one article, I found a line that turned my stomach cold. Investigators are also pursuing leads connected to an identified informant who may have accessed confidential hospital data. That was me. When Tristan came back, I showed him. He swore under his breath. They're painting you as part of it. If he's controlling the narrative from the shadows, you're the fall guy. I can't keep running forever, I said quietly. Then we find him first, and we make him confess. We checked into a cheap motel near the edge of the city. The walls smelled of mildew, the lights flickered, and the bed sheets felt like sandpaper. But for the first time in days, I felt hidden. Tristan set up his laptop on the dresser, connecting it to a portable drive. I made backups of everything you sent me, he said. Emails, call logs, transactions, all of it. If he tries to erase you, this goes public. Won't that drag my mother in too? I asked. He hesitated. It already will, but the truth's the only way out. I looked out the window where the neon sign outside buzzed faintly against the rain. Somewhere out there, my father was watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. And I knew, deep down, this was only the beginning of the reckoning. By morning, Tristan was gone. His bag, laptop, and car keys, all missing. The motel manager said he checked out before dawn. At first, I thought maybe he went to meet the police or gather more evidence. But then my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Stop looking," a man's voice said. My father's voice. "Where's Tristan?" I demanded. "You've lost enough, son. Don't make me finish what you started." Before I could reply, the line went dead. My hand shook as I stared at the phone screen. It was happening again. Control, silence, manipulation. The difference now was that I wasn't the frightened child anymore. I packed what little I had left, checked out, and walked into the daylight with one goal: find Tristan. 3 days passed. No word from him. No trace. Then a message arrived from a private number. A video file, grainy and unstable. It showed Tristan, tied to a chair in some dim warehouse, blood on his lip. My father stood behind him, calm, collected, speaking directly into the camera. "You wanted the truth, son? Here it is. The people who fund this operation don't care about right or wrong. They care about silence. You can end this right now. Delete everything, confess your lies, and walk away. Or he pays for what you started." The video cut off abruptly. I felt something in me fracture, the last piece of denial gone. I'd lied once to survive. Now telling the truth might be what kills me.
I watched that video on repeat until my mind blurred the edges between fear and fury. Every part of me screamed to go to the police, but the truth was complicated now. I had lied about cancer, I had hidden evidence, and the system my father corrupted still had people working for him inside it. If I went through official channels, Tristan would die before anyone even wrote a report. So I did what I swore I'd never do again. I called one of my father's old associates, Pender. He answered on the third ring. "I told him you'd come crawling back," Pender said. His voice was smooth, almost mocking. "He said you'd finally learn that blood isn't a bond you can break." "I don't care about that," I said. "Where is he?" A pause, then laughter. "You really think I'd tell you? You're the reason he's burning. You're the reason we all are." And then, softer. "But if you're serious, you might want to check the docs. He always liked ending things where no one could hear." The line went dead. The docks were quiet that night. Just the low hum of the tide and the rusted clank of old chains swaying in the wind. I hid behind a container, heart hammering so loud I swore the sound would give me away. Then I saw him. My father. He was standing near a black SUV, talking to someone I couldn't quite make out. Tristan was there too,
slumped in a chair, gagged but conscious. His eyes flickered toward me, just for a second, and I saw the smallest flicker of hope. I reached for my phone, ready to hit record, when my father suddenly turned toward the shadows. "You can come out now, son." I froze. He smiled faintly. "You're predictable. Always were." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to that old familiar tone, calm, poisonous. "You think this is about fraud? This is about loyalty. You wanted to destroy me, but everything I built, the money, the lies, it kept you alive. It made you." I stepped forward. "No, it killed everything that was real in us." He laughed, a dry, broken sound that echoed across the empty dock. He said, "Reality is what you can make people believe. You should know that better than anyone. You lied about cancer, remember?" The words hit harder than I expected, because he was right. I wasn't innocent. I was a liar too. But the difference was, I wanted to stop. He never did. "I lied because I was desperate," I said quietly. "You lied because you liked watching people believe you." He smirked. "And you think that makes you better than me?" "No," I said, stepping closer, "but it means I still have something left to lose." I lunged forward before I could think. Adrenaline, fear, something primal, and tackled him to the ground. The gun in his hand skittered across the concrete. Tristan shouted through the gag, struggling against the ropes. We fought. Wild, messy, not cinematic. He was stronger, but I was angrier. He got one arm free and slammed his elbow into my jaw. I staggered, tasted blood, and saw him reach for the gun. Before he could grab it, Tristan, somehow, kicked the chair hard enough to topple toward us. The crash distracted him just long enough. I dove forward, grabbed the weapon, and aimed it at him. For a long, shaking second, neither of us spoke. The wind howled through the metal cranes. My finger trembled on the trigger. "Go ahead," he said almost calmly. "Finish the job your mother started." The mention of her name froze me. "What did you just say?" He smiled. "You really think she didn't know? She was the one who told me where you were hiding. She said you'd run to Tristan. She just wanted it to be quick." My stomach turned to ice. "You're lying." He shrugged. "Maybe. But you'll never know for sure, will you?" I didn't pull the trigger. I couldn't. Instead, I fired into the air, the sound cracking through the night. Within minutes, flashing lights appeared at the far end of the docks. Sirens, shouting, chaos. Tristan must have sent a signal somehow, or maybe someone finally tipped the police off. They swarmed the place fast. My father was still smirking as they cuffed him. As he was dragged past me, he leaned in and whispered, "You'll see her again soon. Ask her yourself." I wanted to scream, to demand what that meant, but the officers were already pushing me aside. Tristan was taken to an ambulance, dazed but alive. When I looked back, my father was gone, swallowed by the flashing red and blue lights. And somewhere deep in my chest, beneath the relief, was something colder. Doubt. Because a part of me knew he wasn't lying about her. The night after the arrest, I stayed in the hospital waiting room while Tristan was treated. He had bruises, a concussion, and a stitched lip, but he was alive. That should have been enough to feel relief. It wasn't. All I could think about was my father's whisper, "You'll see her again soon. Ask her yourself." At dawn, I called the only person I knew who might have answers, Detective Marlowe, the investigator handling the fraud case. He sounded tired, his voice rough from too many sleepless nights. "We've got him in custody," he said, "but your father's playing games. He's refusing a lawyer, demanding to speak only with you." "Me?" "Yes. Says he has something you'll want to hear. And your mother was spotted at a bus station in Edgewater last night." My heart sank. She was running. Again. And suddenly it made sense. My father wasn't warning me, he was taunting me. Edgewater was 2 hours away, a crumbling seaside town where fog clung to the buildings like ghosts. I drove there myself, ignoring Marlowe's warnings to wait for backup. The bus station looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. A single attendant sat behind a dirty glass booth, sipping coffee. I showed him my mother's picture. He nodded slowly. Yeah, she was here last night. Bought a ticket to Ridgeport, but she never got on the bus. My stomach tightened. You're sure? Yeah, he said. She was talking to some man in a gray coat before she disappeared. They left together. I didn't need to ask who it was. I already knew. That night, I sat in my car outside the station, replaying every memory I had of her. Every quiet smile, every whispered prayer, every moment I'd mistaken for love. Had she really betrayed me? Or had she just given up? Detective Marlowe called again the next morning. Your father's been talking, he said grimly, but not to us, to a journalist. What? He arranged a call from the holding cell, claims he has documents proving you were complicit in his crimes, said your fake cancer story was a cover for insider leaks. My throat dried up. That's a lie. He knew it, he said, but it doesn't matter. The media's running with it. He's turning this into a war of narratives. I opened my phone. He was right. Every news site, every feed. The son who lied, whistleblower or master manipulator. In a single day, my name went from victim to villain. And all the while, my mother was still out there, silent, unseen. 2 days later, I got an email. No subject line, no sender. Just a single sentence. Meet me where the waves break loudest. Attached was a photo of the old coastal overlook, the same place I'd gone after the trials in my dreams, the one that had always symbolized peace. Except now, it meant something else. When I arrived, the sky was gray, the ocean restless. And there she was, my mother, standing at the edge of the cliff, her hair whipping in the wind, her face unreadable. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she said softly, "He told me you'd come." I approached slowly. "Why are you here, Mom?" She didn't turn around. "Because it's over. He said he's ready to end it. All of it. The money, the lies. He just wanted to see if you were still his." I frowned. What does that mean? She finally turned and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before, exhaustion so deep it looked like surrender. "I helped him," she whispered. "I told him where you were hiding. I thought if I did, he'd stop. He promised he wouldn't hurt Tristan." I clenched my heart. "You believed him?" Tears welled up. "I wanted to, because if I didn't, then I'd have to admit I married a monster." She stepped closer, trembling. "He said if you walk away now, they'll let you live. Please, just go. Don't drag this out anymore." I shook my head. "No, I can't walk away. Not anymore." Her eyes filled with panic. "Then God help you, because none of us can." The waves crashed harder below us, like the sea itself was holding its breath. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the years had finally caught up to her. The wind tore through her shawl, and for a second I thought she might fall, or maybe she wanted to. "Mom," I said softer now, "tell me the truth. What's he planning?" Her lips trembled. "He has evidence, real evidence, documents, recordings, bank transfers, everything. He said if he goes down, you go with him." I swallowed hard. "Where is it?" "In the lockbox," she whispered.
The one under the floorboard of his study. He made me promise not to touch it, not to burn it. Said it was our insurance policy. I stared at her, the memory flashing back. Me as a child, watching him pull out that old wooden box when he thought no one was looking. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She smiled faintly, tears streaking her cheeks. "Because I kept hoping he'd change. Because I didn't want you to see how much of him is in you." And just like that, I understood. She wasn't here to reconcile. She was here to confess before she disappeared forever. That night, I drove back to the old house. It was quiet now, boarded up, dust thick enough to muffle footsteps. The police had raided it weeks ago, but they hadn't found everything. I went straight to his study, the room where it had all started. The air still smelled faintly of his cologne and stale whiskey. I knelt near the far wall, pried up the corner of the floorboard, and there it was, the lockbox. Heavy, iron, and older than I remembered. Inside were folders, USB drives, and handwritten ledgers filled with names and numbers, clients, transactions, offshore accounts, and among them, a single photo. It was me, as a boy, in a hospital bed. On the back, in his handwriting, were 4 words. The first false claim. My breath caught. My life, the moment my mother said he saved me, was the start of it all. His empire was built on my sickness. The next morning, I brought the lockbox to Detective Marlowe. He looked through the files in silence, his expression darkening with every page. "This isn't just fraud," he said, finally. "This connects politicians, hospital executives, and half the insurance board. If what's in here goes public, it won't just take your father down, it'll drag the whole system with him." I leaned forward. "Then do it." He shook his head. "We can't. Not yet. If this leaks without protection, you'll disappear before anyone believes you." "I'm already disappearing," I muttered. That night, I stayed at Tristan's apartment. He was healing slowly, still walking with a limp. We sat on the balcony, staring at the skyline in silence. "Do you ever think it's possible to forgive them?" He looked at me for a long time. "Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. But that doesn't mean you owe it." I nodded, but inside I knew forgiveness wasn't coming, only reckoning. The reckoning came faster than I expected. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of glass breaking. Tristan's living room window was shattered. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. I grabbed the lockbox and hid behind the kitchen counter. 2 figures moved through the shadows, whispering. "Check the rooms," he said. "The files are still here." I didn't recognize the voices. Not police, not my father's men. New players. When one of them stepped closer, I grabbed a metal lamp and swung it hard. It connected with a dull crack, and he collapsed. The other bolted for the door. Tristan stumbled out of his room, dazed. "What the hell?" "They're not done with us," I said. "We have to end this before they do." We spent the next day preparing. Tristan contacted a journalist he trusted, a woman named Elise Monroe, known for taking down corporate cover-ups. We gave her copies of the files and arranged a meeting at a public cafe. Broad daylight, no surprises. When she saw the evidence, her eyes widened. She said, "This is enough to topple everything. But if we run this, you understand what happens next? There's no going back. Your name, your father, your mother, it'll all be out there." "I know," I said quietly. "Maybe that's the only way to stop it from happening again." That night, before the story went live, I drove back to the coast. The same overlook, the same restless sea. For the first time, I didn't feel haunted. I felt ready. I whispered into the wind, "It started with a lie, it ends with the truth." And for once, the waves didn't sound angry, they sounded like release. By morning, the story was everywhere. Headlines screamed his father's name. Prominent surgeon tied to decades-long fraud and cover-up. News anchors used words like corruption, systemic abuse, betrayal. I watched it unfold on Tristan's old TV, numb. The journalist, Elise, had done it. She had exposed everything with precision and restraint, protecting me as a key witness. But there was no protection from what came next. My phone didn't stop buzzing. Unknown numbers, voicemails, even death threats. Then came one message that made my blood run cold. It was from my father. "You've destroyed everything, but you still don't understand what you've unleashed." Attached was a video, a grainy heat of a woman sitting in a dim room, blindfolded. My mother. The video was time-stamped just hours earlier. I didn't know where she was, but I knew who could find out. Marlo. When he showed me, he swore under his breath, "Your father's desperate. He's being hunted by everyone. Feds, partners, even his own people. He's cornered, which makes him dangerous." "I don't care," I said. "He has my mother." We traced the metadata, an abandoned estate on the outskirts of the city. It used to be one of his rehab centers, a front for siphoning funds. I didn't wait for backup. Tristan tried to stop me. "If you go alone, I'm not letting him use her as leverage again." By the time I reached the estate, night had fallen. The front doors were ajar. The smell of antiseptic and decay clung to the air. I stepped inside, my heart pounding like it remembered every childhood fear all at once. She was there, tied to a chair in what used to be a patient room. Her hair was streaked with gray now, her face pale. "Mom," I whispered, untying her hands. Before she could speak, a voice echoed behind me. "Always the savior," he said. I turned. My father looked hollowed out, thinner, his eyes bloodshot, but still carrying that unbearable calm. "I warned you," he said softly. "You think the truth sets you free, but it destroys everything it touches." "It already destroyed us." He smiled faintly. "You're still my son. I made you what you are. The system didn't corrupt me. It was born that way. I just learned to profit from it." "You used people. You used me." He stepped closer, something like sorrow flickering in his eyes. "No, Daniel, I protected you. Every scam, every deal, it kept you alive. I did what had to be done." I shook my head. "No, you just made yourself believe that." The sound of sirens grew faint in the distance. Marlo had followed my signal. My father's gaze flicked towards the window. "They'll never understand what we built," he muttered, "but maybe you can. Maybe you'll finish what I started." He reached into his coat, and instinct took over. I tackled him. The gun clattered across the floor. He struggled weakly, shouting, "You think they'll let you walk away clean? You're part of this too." The officers burst in seconds later, weapons drawn. He froze, eyes wild, caught between pride and ruin. As they dragged him out, he turned his head toward me. "You did this to us." And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small under his gaze. I felt free. Freedom, however, came with silence. The media frenzy faded. People moved on. But for me, life didn't go back to normal. It simply became quieter. Tristan recovered. He started volunteering at a recovery program, helping others rebuild. Sometimes he'd invite me along, but I always found excuses not to go. My mother left the city. She said she needed distance, from the memories, from me, from everything. And I didn't blame her. I kept the lockbox, though. Empty now, except for one thing. That photo of me as a boy. I kept it on my desk as a reminder that even innocence can be forged into a weapon if placed in the wrong hands. One evening months later, Elise called. She said, "They found something. A sealed letter in your father's private storage unit, addressed to you." I met her at the station. The letter was dated a week before his sentencing.
His handwriting was unmistakable, precise, almost surgical. Daniel, if you're reading this, it means I've lost control of the narrative. Perhaps that's justice, perhaps not. You always wanted truth. Here it is. I built my empire.
I built my empire on manipulation, yes. But you, my son, you were my first experiment in survival. I taught you to adapt, to endure, to make the unbearable tolerable. That is your inheritance. Not guilt, not deceit, but resilience. You can hate me for what I've done, but don't deny what you've become because of it. I folded it, unsure whether to burn it or keep it. Instead, I put it back in the box. Not forgiveness, just closure. Years passed. I moved to a quieter town by the coast, far enough to forget, close enough to remember. I started working with a local foundation, helping expose medical malpractice. The irony wasn't lost on me. Some nights, I'd still dream of that hospital bed, the hum of machines, my mother's voice, my father's shadow at the door. But in the daylight, I found peace in small things. Coffee at sunrise, the smell of the sea, the sound of people laughing without fear. Tristan visited sometimes. We never talked about the past. We didn't need to. It was on one of those quiet mornings that I saw a young boy sitting by the dock, sketching boats in a worn notebook. He reminded me of myself, curious, cautious, trying to capture something fleeting. "Nice drawing," I said. He looked up, smiled shyly. "Thanks. My dad used to build boats before he got sick." I hesitated, then nodded. Mine was a doctor. He fixed people. "Did he make them better?" the boy asked. I took a deep breath. He tried to, in his own way. When he ran off, leaving his sketchbook behind, I flipped through it, pages filled with rough lines and bright hopes, and for the first time in years, I felt something clean. The sea hasn't changed. It still roars, still reaches, still reminds me that nothing stays buried forever. I stood at the edge of the water, the wind cold against my face. In my hand, the letter, the final piece of him I hadn't yet let go. I tore it into small pieces and let them scatter one by one until the tide swallowed them. Maybe he was right. Maybe resilience was my inheritance. But it didn't belong to him anymore. It was mine now. As the horizon burned gold, I whispered to no one in particular, "I'm done surviving. I'm ready to live." And for the first time in my life, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt like peace.
If this story moved you and stayed with you, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and share it with someone who'd feel it too. The more people who see it, the more voices we give to stories that deserve to be remembered.